These humans need no introduction, so I'm not doing one. Surf therapy for emergency services. You got it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I would complain I got the sun in my eyes, but we're from England and I haven't seen the sun since July, so hey. Welcome. We are Surf Well and Swell. I'm James. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what we do, why we do it, and why it's important for us to collaborate. Just as a first kind of quick courtesy warning, really, we're all serving police officers, and we are going to talk about some stuff which may be triggering or maybe a bit traumatic. There's nothing too heavy, and we're not going to go into any gruesome detail, but if anyone does feel that they need to take a moment just to step out, Joel is at the back. Joel? If anyone needs to step out, he is more than capable of looking after you for 5-10 minutes, so please don't feel pressure if you need to do that. So we're really, really privileged to be here. We are, as I said, serving police officers. My name's James, programme founder and project lead. So about 4 years ago, I'm just going to tell you why we started this and why it's really important for me as a person to run this. 4 years ago, Sam and I think we were self-medicating a little bit more than we realised with surfing. We'd had a rubbish day at work, we'd go out and we'd surf. You know, we worked together, we supervised people on our team, and we use surfing as a way to go out and just talk. I've been a police officer for about 19 years in the UK, worked in different spots across the country. I've had a colleague next to me that was stabbed. I've had a machete waved in my face. Lots of the stuff that you would think would traumatise you, but the coping strategies that I had for that were actually quite good and didn't massively traumatise me as much as you'd think. But the thing that really gets me is that everyone has got their trauma that can affect them and can really trigger them and can be really, really powerful. We were supervising an officer on our team who was assaulted, and she was attacked on duty, and the point that she closed her eyes and said, "This is it, it's game over. I can't attack this person back, and I'm going to lose my life." And that left us in a really tricky position because she really wanted to return to work, and she really wanted to be in the front line supporting people and working alongside her colleagues, but the options that were available to her just weren't suitable. So Sam and I out for a surf at our beach in Cornwall. Came up with the idea flippantly. We said we should just take her out surfing. That will cure all our woes. It works for us. That's what we need to do. It was perfect timing in the UK because we had charities existing who help children. We had the Wave Project, and Operation Surf over in the States was just getting bigger. And it just all happened at that kind of right time for us. We looked at options and thought, actually, this is something that could really work for the police force and for emergency services, first responders as a whole. So we set about a period of research, and fortunate enough to meet Chris, who connected us with some other organisations across the world. We went through a little bit of a journey. When we first proposed it, it was kind of laughed out of the room. It was a few years ago. Surf therapy wasn't seen in the UK as anything that's kind of anything capable of doing anything more than just taking people out to the beach and having a nice day. But we really, really pushed for it. And the key thing for me, and I talk about my trauma, is you can be, as an emergency services worker or frontline first responder, you can be just on a complete pathway and everything can be completely normal, but you just don't know when that one incident is going to happen that can completely break you. And for me, seeing the impact of my family on a bereavement, so my cousin was a police officer, 22 years old, just joined the police, and tragically got killed on duty in the UK, and he never made it home. And to see the impact that that had on my family just made me realise that the stuff that we deal with as first responders can be so tragic that it can literally just, you get up one morning and your life is changed by the end of the day. And that, for me, is why it's so right that we look after our first responders and veterans and those communities, because we all do those jobs that can really, really traumatise you and can lead to some pretty horrendous outcomes. And that's, for me, why it's so important to continue with this.
Thanks, mate.
Hey, mate.
Hey, everyone. I'm Sam. Part of my introduction has been done for me. I'm project founder and project lead with James. Just to give you a bit of an idea of why I got into this and why I'm passionate about it. Cool down. So I'm lucky. I've had the ocean in my life since I can remember. I lived very, very close to the sea for my whole life, and I used it a lot more than I realised initially. My parents went through quite an awkward divorce when I was young, and I didn't really realise it at the time, but I was using getting in the sea as a coping mechanism to get through that. And the first time that I think I really realised that was probably about 10, 11 years old, and it was January, February, which, for those of you who don't know, in the UK is pretty cold. Sea is 8 degrees centigrade. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's cold. And I remember saying to my dad, "Dad, I just need to go in the sea." And I didn't surf at the time. I'm afraid I boogie boarded. I was only 11, so please forgive me. And I remember saying to her, I just need to get in the sea. I need to get to the sea. And my dad was like, okay, fine. I'll take you. I'll bring the dogs and I'll take the dogs for a walk and you can go for a surf. So brilliant, okay. So I only had a shorty wetsuit at the time, which was about 2 mil thick. And as an 11-year-old, you don't think about you just do stuff, don't you? And so I went and I got in. And I didn't remember, but my dad had told me, if you get cold, the car is unlocked. There's a flask in there with warm water. There's a towel. I'm going to walk the dogs. I forgot he'd said that. I surfed till he finished his dog walk 35 minutes later. And I was the color of my shorts when he got back to me and then panicked and got me home. And then I was in the bath for about an hour until I warmed up. But I had a grin on my face from the minute I got in the sea to the minute that I got out of that bath and I was warmed back up. And fast forward 20 odd years later and I'm in the police and I'm seeing all the stuff that we see on a daily basis, a lot of which isn't very nice. And I'm surfing all the time. And I'm going after late shifts and I'm finishing night shifts at 7 in the morning and I'm jumping in my car and driving an hour and a half to the beach to go surfing. And I'm doing it because I think, yeah, I just need to get in the sea. I just need to go surfing. I love surfing. That's why I'm doing it. And then fast forward another sort of 10, 15 years later, and I met this tenacious idiot. I came out really loud. And we had that conversation, and I'd had that conversation with others before about, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could run a program and we could get some cops in the sea, and that would be fantastic. But for one reason or another, it didn't happen. And that's where, and it pains me to do this, but I have to give him some credit. This
is definitely off the piste.
when he wants something to happen, he's quite tenacious about it. And after that conversation that we had, that's when Surfwell kind of really happened with your kind of drive and a few ideas maybe. And yeah.
This is literally the nicest thing he's ever said to me.
That is actually, I don't know why I've chosen this moment to do it.
Wow.
Yeah. We're normally really nasty to each other. Anyway.
Love you.
I was going to begin with like a British accent just to kind of confuse everybody. I've been practicing all weekend. It just, I don't know, too many pints maybe last night, right?
Yeah. Is that a real accent?
Yeah, nice one. Yeah. So my name's Rob Sanderson. I'm a retired police officer now. I started Swell Surf Waves Enjoy Life about 3 years ago, and it really came out of a very similar story, just a need for our communities of service to have a positive outlet. When I was still an active police officer, I was consistently making trips to the ocean. I actually live in Kansas City, believe it or not, and that's where we run our organization out of. And we'll get to that here in a bit, a little bit why that's important. But grew up surfing. And so what I found was when I'd return from these trips to visit my buddy Reggie or whoever, wherever we go, I was able to be more empathetic to people. I was more patient. And it was, I guess the best way to describe it is I would go to the ocean with a full bucket to where I really didn't have any more patience left. And I was able just to pour that out and come back decompressed, reinvigorated, and ready to serve. And I think the moment that I realized that surfing did that for me, I actually brought somebody that had never been before. And he's the quintessential, SWAT cop, just hyper vigilant, always on, always carrying his gun, and I got him out in the water. We paddled out past the breakers, and I could just see like a physical change in his being, and just the days to come, it provided him perspective, and I think maybe some healing as well. So that was kind of the aha moment for us, and we'll get into more of what we do here in a moment, but essentially we take people that have never been to the Pacific or wherever, the ocean, and we get them out there and we break them down and build them back up.
Cool, thanks Rob. I'm Jo, I'm the project coordinator for my sins for Surfwell, and I think I've done pretty well getting these two across from the UK here to this actual right venue. So, no, amazing. But my drive for me, so 27 years as a frontline cop, and I've got no real traumatic stories as such. When I grew up as a gay young female, I wasn't open. I was completely closed down. And when I became a cop, I had many conversations with people saying, shall I come out as a cop? And it was like, whoa, no, don't do that. Don't do that at all. And throughout my childhood and becoming a cop, I hid who I was. I wasn't the real me. but when I surfed, I was always me. And that drove me. So when these two guys said, Joe, we're doing this surf therapy project, do you want to get on board? I was like, oh, there's so much opportunity here. Because not every officer or member of staff from Frontline Emergency Services who comes to us comes with a traumatic background. But it's a build-up of anxiety, stress, depression, whatever that might look like for that individual. So it's really important that all our instructors on Surfwell have very different perspectives, backgrounds, and what they can bring to the project. So I do bring something a little bit different from the guys, and we'll explain, and I'm going to kind of keep an eye on all our timing here. So it's great because today I'm in charge of them. So here we go. I'm literally going to pass it over to, who shall I go for first? Rob, tell us all about Swell. What is your program?
Yeah, so just to reiterate, we provide surf therapy. I can say that now, Chris. Where you at? I used to refuse to say that to veterans, first responders, and also occasional underserved youth programs as well. What's interesting about our program is we take people that, like I said, don't have exposure and it's not in their backyard. And we bring them out to Huntington Beach where we've got a whole team of active duty service members, veterans and first responders that volunteer as our surf coaches, help set everything up. We put them in a really nice Airbnb right on the water. We do yoga, meditation, circle up before we surf. They get paired up with their coach according to kind of personality type and who I feel might best be able to mentor them in the water. Then after each session, we go back to the beach house. We're joined by the mentor coaches. We do community-style, family-style meals together. And if, like I say, if you can only cut carrots, well, that's your job. So you're going to help make the dinner, then we're going to sit down and eat it together. And we have a really great police chaplain from the LA area that comes and visits as well. It doesn't necessarily talk about religion, but he's really, really smart and, as you guys would say, keen on self-care and trauma. And he's just a really good listener, but also a good talker as well. So we build kind of an organic community around the weekend. We do 4 days. And the goal is really just to bring them back refreshed. We typically bring people that have experienced the trauma as a group together, whether that's pairs or a whole team of people. Rachel, hi Rachel. She's a board member. She's our first group that we took out. She lost her best friend in the line of duty, was on scene for that. So we brought her and her board members, and really it's an opportunity for them to bond, but it also does something to serve Swell as well, because if we took just individuals that really didn't have a support group away from their families and away from what they knew, it's important to have them surrounded with others that may recognize if there's some sort of crisis or if they're triggered in some manner.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. Yeah. Sam, could you explain our program to everyone so they can just see the contrast there?
Yeah, I'm going to try. So me and James are notorious at waffling. We talk for hours about stuff when we're asked questions. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try and do this really succinctly. So there's maybe a couple of unique elements about Surfwell. The first thing is that we're not a non-for-profit or a charity. We are serving officers and we're employed by our organisation. And Devon and Cornwall Police, which is one of the police forces in the UK, has decided to operate Surfwell as a police program. So it's a welfare initiative within our organisation, which we operate. We're fortunate enough to sort of operate and run. But it's our organisation that has the final say in how we do it and why we do it. And the reason for that is because they have now seen the huge gains that have come from delivering surf therapy to our colleagues. There are a lot of issues that come with the fact that we run surf therapy for an organisation rather than non-for-profit or charity. It has to work really hard and it has to be done in a certain way. We would love to have set up initially probably as a week-long or a month-long intervention and mirrored some of the other interventions and programs that we'd seen out there when we first set up, but we knew that we couldn't because our organisation can't afford to just lose staff for that length of time in one go. So we run our interventions are a day long, and we just have one day when we meet people for the first time to get to the end of the day where they've confided in us some of the stuff that they've potentially never mentioned, and it can be, and we've had a range of everything from burnout to deep childhood trauma that they've never told anyone about, that they've been holding on to for 40, 50 years, to thoughts of suicide, to planning suicide, to just everything. We've had to try and structure our program so that we can make those conversations happen in that really limited time window that we've got with those people. And that's why we use serving officers as our facilitators and our sort of instructors, because we think, and there was a lot of evidence when we looked around at what existed at the time to suggest that that's how people would relate as quickly as possible to the person that they were going to be with for that day. And I say the person because we also operate on a 1-to-1 ratio at all times, which is quite staffing heavy, and took a bit of convincing for our organisation to give us that many people, but it works, and we've seen the results from that. But we pair up with people at the very start of the day, and then we're with them for the whole day until the very end. And we've put in a whole load of measures and stuff throughout the day to try and instigate those conversations and break down barriers that might lead those conversations to happen when they haven't done previously. So I hope that was succinct enough.
That's the most succinct you've ever done it. Excellent. Thanks, Sam. Rob, I'm going to come back to you. Can you give us an overview of the collaboration process that you guys and us have had?
Yeah, so we actually met through ISTO, connected on the working group, right, for veterans, first responders, people of service. And
I don't think Chris heard that. Just
yeah, through
It was
yeah,
ISTO.
okay, you got it?
ISTO did it. Chris, it was ISTO. Thank you, Chris.
Yay! And so, sitting on Zoom meetings and recognizing that I had an opportunity to meet Gordon Ramsay, we kind of. You telling me that's not?
right.
Gordon
Whoa!
Ramsay?
Hang on a minute.
I said that was loud. Yeah, I did.
All right, sorry. We kind of developed the same sort of joking rapport just over the internet, and we started emailing back and forth. And we thought, hey, I bet we can probably learn something from one another. And we were fortunate enough last year to bring 6 participants out to see them. So we took care of the flight over, and the participants did. PJ was there as well, and they took it from there, and we got to go through their program. Now they run 1-day program, but we had a 1-day program, then 5 days of bar hopping, essentially. No, surfing. And just
5-day program, 1 day of bar hopping.
Yeah, exactly. So it was interesting because you think that you are doing the right things, and then you see another organization doing similar things. You go, okay, confirmation what I'm doing is correct, and then you learn things. So a lot of what Joe does in the circle time now, Rachel does, or Jen does with yoga, meditative breathing. The conversations that are had, the purposeful pairing of coaches with the participants. We really took away a lot. It was a great experience as well. And do you guys want to go into the kind of thought moving forward, or yeah?
Yeah, can do. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're going to talk a bit about the structure of the program, but just to probably jump slightly forward. So culturally, our programs are quite different. The US, England, there's different things. Obviously, it's fairly obvious. But one of the things, as Sam has alluded to, is that we really struggled initially to present this idea and get it taken seriously, which is now, looking back, it's unbelievable, really, because it's achieved such results. But that's where we were. And for us to be able to propose a program that was 4 or 5 days long or a week long was just something that we could never have done. So for us, I think there's now some learning around how we can merge our 2 programs. And I think the fact that ISTO has connected us means that we've also got that evidence base to rely on. Everything that we do throughout our program is based on evidence, because it's the elephant in the room. We've talked about it. We were laughed out of the room when we first presented this to bosses. They literally thought we were taking the mickey. They said, you want to brand a load of board shorts and take people surfing in police duty time? And we said, yeah, definitely. So here we are. Don't sit still for too long, otherwise we'll brand you. Literally. So for us, it's something that's really, really important, because it does give us the option to learn from different cultures and to learn what you guys are doing over here, and for you to learn what we're doing. And it was really reassuring for us, because the evidence shows that it works. The personal kind of testimonials that we had really showed us that it worked, and in some cases it saved lives, which has really blown our minds. And for you guys to come over and share some of the stories about the trauma that you faced, and Rachel and PJ, when you guys came over, it blew our minds as to what you guys go through over here, and to be able to support you in that single day with that one single intervention meant a lot to us. So I think the future is really, really positive, and we've got so many opportunities to work together and achieve amazing things, which everyone in this room is doing. So yeah, it's massive.
Yeah. Do you want to tell them about what the hope is for next year? Or?
So physically, you came over to us. We're looking at sending some of our police officers and first responders over to the States as well, and that'll be like an exchange program. So you can imagine, for police officers, first responders who have been through a highly traumatic incident or are really, really struggling, to be able to offer that really gold standard service that we can exchange across to the States and hopefully other countries as well in the future. It's not just that we're working exclusively. I mean, for us, that's massive. I don't know what your take on that is.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. The thought that I would be bringing people from Kansas City to the UK to go surfing it blew my mind. So I mean, that's why this is so important, because really together, and I know somebody mentioned it in the previous workshops, together the opportunities really are endless, and we can go further when we collaborate and kind of piggyback off what others are doing.
Perfect. You're looking at me as if I've got something to say to that.
Nice one.
Seamless.
Do you know what I love about this is that we've got a script, and they've just gone completely off script, which is great.
Well, Chris
Were you trying
wrote
to
it
recreate
anyway.
Top Gun?
That's what, shall I ask that? Yeah, carry on, you know. Where am I going to go next? I have no idea. No,
So the structure of our day, and we talk about some of
James,
the cultural
Gordon,
differences.
why didn't you tell us about the structure of our day? Go for it,
Plan.
Mr. Ramsey.
So we've talked, we heard some introductions yesterday around safe spaces, around trust, around empathy, and around the importance of building that safe space and that trust. So for us in a day, we've got to work really hard. We've got police officers that are taken off the front line to relate to people, to try to perform a role on surf therapy that needs to have a really powerful impact so that we can kind of put it back to our bosses and say this is something that is working. So the day that we've structured is very much around a certain psychological response. Are there any neuroscientists or brain experts in the room? Oh, right, I need to be on my game then. It's blown my mind. It's massive. So we all know, in super simple terms, the cold water affects the hippocampus, which fires up the language centre. A PTSD sufferer, as you'll probably be aware, Ben, and can probably talk better than I can, when you've got PTSD or have been affected by trauma, that changes the shape of the hippocampus, which causes the brainwaves to change shape and to essentially fire up or to stop the language centres from firing. So our day is specifically designed around eliciting those psychological responses, and we know there's certain points throughout the day, based on the academic research, that actually starts to happen, and you can see it happen before your eyes, which, when we first pitched the idea, we said, the theory is this is what's going to happen. On day one, to say there were some nerves in the room thinking, please let this happen, is an understatement. But it did. And at the point that happens, all that magic's happening, the great feeling you get when you go in the water, the great feeling you get when you catch a wave, the great feeling that you get from going in the water if you're actually petrified of standing in the water because you can't swim, not necessarily standing up on a surfboard, just that first moment of overcoming something and realising, this is amazing, this is life-changing. Stood next to them is someone who says, I get where you've been, I've been there, you can get out of that hole. And I don't want to steal your phrase, but I'm going to nick it. On Surfwell, we've had participants come through who say they've been to counselling, they've been to various interventions, which is something that we refer into later down the line. But that stigma of being a police officer or a first responder is something that we live with every day, that I'm all right, I'm brave, I don't need to worry about that because I'm a first responder and I'm brave and I can deal with all that. That's something that we really fight hard against, and it can be really, really powerful for people to take that first step and come to us. So when that happens, rather than saying, it's all right, we'll help you, come on out, get out of that crappy hole that you're in, all that rubbish that's going on, come on out, we're able to jump in that hole with them, in that muddy pile of rubbish, and say, we're here with you. What do you need to get out of this hole? What can we do to get you out of this? That's all happening when that neuroscience is going on in the water, and when those physiological changes are all happening, there's a police officer stood next to them that says, I get you, and I'm going to get you out of this mess. And then when we're out of there, let's get you back on track. And yeah, I use the word mind-blowing, and I do that deliberately because it really genuinely has blown our minds. We've had people who have talked to us, and at the end of the session have said, right, you've created such a safe space that I can tell you something now. I've been stockpiling medication with a view to taking my own life, and I was planning on doing that today. I'm getting my affairs in order, and I'm going to take my own life today. And to have someone stand there and tell you that on more than 5 or 6 occasions is super humbling for us, and is why we continue to do what we do. It literally is saving lives, and that's the power of what we all do, and that's why it's so important for us to collaborate, learn the cultural differences, share the best evidence, and make sure that we provide the best programs possible. So it's something that's so powerful for us.
Nice one.
That's great. Thank you.
Nice one, Cav.
Rob, what would you say, when you came over, what did you take away? What were the 2 or 3 main things that you took away from your visit with us, would you say?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it earlier, but just the manner in which you guys are very purposeful with your conversations with the participants. You know, the manner in which you kind of created that safe space initially by sharing your stories, not too in depth, but just briefly as you did today, and then trying to lower anxiety before we actually went out into the water. So yeah, those 3 things really just I was able to pull away along with some of the technical aspects of the yoga and what you kind of brought us through. It was very easy, but yet I could feel, even though I've surfed almost my whole life, I felt more at ease after kind of going through the stretching, the breathing. Yeah.
I think it's something that we've heard, if I can, Jeff. It's just through talking, and it's again the reason why collaboration is so important, because in sleepy little England, we're miles away, and we get great waves and great weather as well, as you obviously all know, and I don't even need to tell you about that, because it is just great, isn't it? Death silence. We do get world-class waves, honestly. See me afterwards, I'll show you some pictures. So for us, it's really, really important that we do come together at these events and learn, because yesterday we heard things about how to create a safe space is so important, about how sharing all the information, all the learning together, it really reinforces what we believe is that it is a program that can change lives and save lives. I think it's so powerful.
Sam, I'm going to come to you because you've been really quiet and you threw my book away. So
It's unusual, isn't
I'm
it?
going to put you on the spot. So obviously, the Swell, we're going to send a crew over, hopefully. What does that look like? What do we think that's going to look like, and why?
So that's an interesting one. For us, this is something that is again really hard. So we have maybe some unique challenges for our program because of how it's structured and because of how it's operated. Funding, thankfully, isn't one of them. We've got a huge organization that supports us, so we don't have to have dedicated fundraisers, and we're very fortunate about that. However, there are other issues that come with delivering this within a large organization and other problems. And I think what we can see the value sometimes in setting up something like an exchange program and getting our officers out there, but there are huge barriers to that in terms of perception, what that looks like, not just from the public in terms of them, well, hang on, why are we sending 6 police officers over to America for a surfing holiday and, you know, taxpayers' money? Why are we doing that? To our own staff in our own organization who might think that, you know, working incredibly hard on the front line with limited resources and limited staffing, who are seeing some of their colleagues in their eyes potentially being sent on a paid holiday and having the same questions. And those barriers are really challenging, but we're trying to push through those because we can see the value that that would give to those individuals. And Rob's talked about it before, and I'm going to steal some of what you said, Rob, around how there's huge value in taking someone out of the area that has caused them their trauma and putting them somewhere that is totally unrelated to that, where that trauma has happened. And you give them that ability to completely let go and not think about any of that. And we've done things on our program that emulate that. So we're very conscious that there is nothing on the program, from our clothing to the vehicles we use to the equipment we use, nothing that would indicate it's to do with the police. So if someone walks into that room, there is nothing that should remind them of the fact that they're in law enforcement, and that's intentional because we don't want them to be thinking about that while they're there and to be re-triggered for any reason or anything like that. And that's something we are quite certain that there are people in our organization who would have immense benefits to them from setting up that sort of exchange program, and the shared learning that will inevitably come from it as well. Sending our people out on a regular basis, getting people across from Rob's program on a regular basis, that will instigate, it's going to happen organically, it's going to be natural, but it will instigate a process of shared learning and development where we can learn from each other and how we deliver. And if we make a change to our program, Rob might think that's a great change and adopt it, and vice versa. So we're excited, a little bit nervous about the future and getting it going, but very excited about it too.
Cool, thanks, Sam. Have you guys got anything else that you want to add before we chuck it out there for some questions at all?
I think it's just chuck it out there, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Happy to chuck it out
Yeah.
there. Yeah, cool.
Do you guys want questions?
Yeah. Any questions out there?
I got you, Chris. Don't worry.
I was just wondering, yesterday, one of the bullets that we wrote down on a piece of paper, how we move forward from this year to 2023, is that we as organization with programs for mental health within law enforcement veterans, is that we are going to collaborate with collecting data. Do you think that next year, if we have blown the minds of all the critics and skeptic people, that you as Surfwell could change your program to be larger than one-day program?
I think anything's possible. I think and like James alluded to, when we first set this up, we had moments of doubt in our mind about whether it would even happen within our organisation, and we were really fortunate that we had the help and guidance that we had from people like Chris and Isto, and just giving us. And it really was about the evidence. It was all about the evidence, because without that, our organisation would have instantly said, no, you've got to be joking. No. But we were able to put in front of them so much evidence that indicated the positivity and the benefit to the wider organisation and the communities that we serve, that they just had to try it, and they took that leap of faith and they tried it. So that evidence was so important. And I would say never say never. I think having been through that experience to see where we are now, I think anything is possible, whether it will happen or not, whether it would work or not, whether the one-day intervention versus a week-long would be better, or whether we'd lose something or not, I don't know, and we'd be more than willing to explore it. But yeah, never say never.
It is something that and it's really relevant because it's something that came up for us that when we first set the program up is do we look at a day or 3 or 5 days or however long or over a period of time? And in the short space of time that we've got, as Joe says, we do tend to ramble on because we're so passionate about this. We can talk for days about it. But the key thing is that it's that one first day has to work really, really hard, and we've not gone into much detail about the processes that happen and the one-to-ones that we have at the end of that session. But essentially what we're doing is getting the participants to a point where they've experienced something themselves that's caused them to develop or to move on. So there's a sense of progression from the start of the day, and we see it as a tangible thing throughout the day. You can see the physical change in people from the start to the end. They all, throughout the day, overcome something. And that can be from a fear of putting a wetsuit on to looking, really silly walking across the beach, to going out in big surf, or to standing on a fish, or whatever it is. All those fears, they all overcome. And the second session that we run, so each participant will get 2 sessions. So it is a single day, but you've got a second session where people are blended with people who are there for the first time, people who are back there for the second session who can egg on and motivate the people who are there for the first time. So it gives you that progression, and it's all about a progression and putting the onus back on that participant to manage their own welfare and to give them the tools to say, you've got this and you're okay and you can manage to go forward with this support. So it's a really empowering thing to do, and that's why we've started to see quite significant long-lasting results. And it was a big concern for us, wasn't it? I think we were really worried that it would be a great day and that's it, and 2 or 3 weeks later everyone would go, that was a fun day and that's it. And we compared and contrasted that with the holiday effect of going away with a group of people, experiencing these massive, powerful, life-changing bonds with others, and then having the holiday effect of going home and thinking, oh, I feel a bit down now. That was a great week, and back to reality. So for us, it's a real blend when you consider the high-level trauma that some people talk about and some of the really griefy stuff that they kind of talk through with us. It's an opportunity to start to open the door for us to refer to professional agencies to give them that support, and then get them back and check up on them and make sure that they've got the tools to move forward. So that's kind of what we do.
There's some great follow-up questions to this in the app, but I want to make sure that we turn to the floor first.
Yeah, thank you guys, and just to say well done, because I remember some of those early day email threads I was on. But just a real quick, we've just done some research, and one of the things that came up with first responders in particular is the stigma around doing anything that's associated with the organisation. So police officers doing anything mental healthy within the police, and there was actually quite a want of separation. But clearly from the work you've done, the evidence you put out, you guys are smashing it. So how have you overcome that stigma that seems to be one of the biggest concerns we found in that piece of work, at least?
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, that's potentially the biggest issue, and I'm sure the likes of Ben and others who run these programs for first responders can attest to this. That is potentially the biggest issue with targeting the demographic of first responders and veterans, is breaking through those barriers of stigma. And in the early days when we first set up, our organisation was very keen to make sure that the risk was managed, and they saw the psychological risk as being by far and away the main risk. And they felt that, well, hang on, you're not trained counsellors, you're not clinicians. How do we know you're safe to take someone out who then discloses something that could be complex PTSD or suicidality? How are you going to cope with that? How are we going to deal with it? So they initially wanted the program to take referrals through our own in-house occupational health referral unit. And we found over time that we were getting a lot of people come to us direct and say, oh, I've heard about the program. I'm quite desperate for help. How can I get involved? and we say, okay, you just got to speak to occupational health, and then they can put you in touch with us. It's just a tick box. They'll have a quick chat with you, and if they're happy that you need some help, they'll pass you on, and we'd never hear from them again. And we sort of saw really early on that there was clearly some sort of a barrier there. So we pushed quite hard, and we, through modifying our program in various ways, so we have a system called eGrist, which is an online risk assessment tool that's used by the NHS in certain sectors in England, and it's a clinical risk assessment process. But we've had to use that tool and put that tool to our occupational health unit, get them to agree that we can use that tool for our program. And at that point, we were able to take direct referrals from the individual, or from line managers, or from friends who had a colleague at work they were worried about. And literally, when that change came in and the word got out, the participant numbers went through the roof, and Jo wanted to punch us because she runs the referral team, and they got extremely busy overnight. So that's been one of the key areas, is all about removing barriers, and we've done that in lots of other ways as well. So it's hard to kind of think, but like people, veterans, law enforcement, you think like, oh, okay, yeah, you're used to getting that emergency call and going to that horrific accident or confronting someone violent or whatever. You're not going to be nervous about turning up to a session and worried about where you're going to park, are you? Why would you be worried about that? But they are. They're human beings, and they're worried about talking in front of people like this. They're nervous, like I am now, talking in front of a group of people. They're worried about, and they'll give themselves excuses to engage with the program. They'll want to engage because they want the help, but they'll be looking for an excuse not to engage. And so and it can be that simple. It can literally be, oh, you know what, I haven't got any change, and I don't know what I'm going to park tomorrow. Do I have to pay on a card or cash? It's too much. No, maybe I won't go. So we've had to do everything possible to remove every single one of those little barriers with the program. So the joining instructions that Jo sends out will have the parking information, the where you park, how you pay. We meet them in the car park now, so the instructor that's allocated to them for the day, who will be briefed beforehand on who's coming and what their needs are and what their background is through the use of the eGrist system, will know exactly who they're going to be with for the day. They'll go into the car park and they'll be actively watching for that person to arrive, so that if they park up, as we've also had, and they sit in their car for 30 seconds trying to pluck up courage to come and engage, and then they can't do it and they drive off, that person will be able to spot them, hopefully, in the car park and engage with them before that moment happens. So it's loads and loads of little developments to the program that have happened over time that has hopefully removed as many of those barriers as possible.
I think, and just as a kind of help for other therapy organisations that are here, the irony is that I talked a little bit, or that we've talked a little bit about our biggest barrier, which was you guys are having a massive jolly at the beach and just having a hoot, and you're not doing really much. Actually, we've spun that, and that is one of our biggest successes, because, yeah, we are at the beach having a great laugh, and that's what the participants can tell themselves. I'm going to surf while I'm going to the beach. I'm not going counselling. I'm not going to go and get mental health support. I'm just going down the beach. And it enables us to grab them through that hook, and then when they get there, that's the perception that they have. But the branding, the detail, the fact that the day is choreographed rigidly to military precision, but they just feel like they're rocking up and having a day at the beach. But behind the scenes, all these things are going on with a deliberate goal to elicit those psychological and physiological responses. And it's why at the end of the day, they sit back and go, I don't know what you've done to me. I was just coming for a day at the beach, and I feel like I've had a therapy session. I'm knackered. And that's deliberate. And that's how that stigma, it's a really powerful way of breaking it down, because it gives them the permission to use another slight kind of easy excuse, but actually they're going for some quite in-depth mental health support.
I think, I was going to say, James, I think as well, is that when they do come along, they see us as the helpers helping the helpers, but we take off our shields, and we are very much not police officers for the day, are we? We're their friends and their colleagues, but they see sides of us that are very different from what we portray during our average working day, and that really resonates with them. And then they go away from there and they go, yeah, Jo, God blimey, God blimey, that's very English, isn't it? Oh, blimey, Gov.
That's the Rob Sanderson School of English Lessons.
Yeah, they'll go away and go, cool, blimey. I didn't know that about Jo. And wow, okay, that's interesting. She's a human being. She's not a RoboCop after all. So that helps with the stigma as well.
I do, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to try to formulate this question in the most thoughtful way that I can. It strikes me as key to your program success that the folks that you serve are among people that understand where they come from, right? But it also strikes me at the same time that some of us might come from places where there's a rift between the policing community and the community, and it strikes me that there's a really interesting opportunity here to like bridge some gaps. Have you thought about that at all? It sounds like maybe that's like a second or third generation of what you're doing, but does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, that's a challenge for us as well to kind of prove what we're doing for the community is a good thing. And when you speak about bridging the gap, that's where the idea was to partner with the Police Athletic League and take the underserved youth out and show them, because they're partnered with the person of service, not just police, but veterans, active duty service members, firefighters. So yeah, it's interesting because we've been able to do a little bit of that within the community, and part of our strategic plan for Swell is that we are a steward of the community. So all of our board members, in some fashion or another, they do other volunteer work, and they're able to speak to kind of the mission. And it's certainly a challenge, and it's something that if you get up and you just want to kind of argue back at whatever the narrative might be, there's not going to be any progress. All you can do is do that one small thing that you think might improve that relationship. And for us, it's working with the Police Athletic League, not just taking them surfing, but teaching them how to swim, going down there, acting as a punching bag for their boxing program or whatever. So yeah, service in other areas has been key for us.
James, did you want to comment on, because we're doing a domestic violence potential link as well, aren't we? So.
Yeah, so we've looked at this as an option. So, you know, as we said, we're all serving police officers who deliver to frontline emergency workers because we get that problem, and that's something that we've studied to quite a lot of detail in terms of the academic background. But what we noticed is that we get some disclosures from our participants, and we talked about the neuroscience and how that gets language centres firing up, and we find that people give us disclosures that they weren't necessarily comfortable to do at a counselling session, and it comes kind of by accident, and they do apologise, as I said, for making those disclosures. And a really complicated area for us is within the police service that women, men, anyone in a domestic violence situation don't feel comfortable to open up about it and report it because they're going to have to report it to their colleagues, and they know that there's going to be action taken. So it's something that we're looking at is how we can start to infiltrate that. And I can see Chris lurking here, so I'm thinking I'm rambling. Do I need to stop? Yeah, so hopefully that explains that.
We've got another 10 minutes, so you can ramble a bit more. Any other questions from the floor?
Just to kind of follow up with what you said in the back, which I think is a really interesting question, and kind of in the reverse, when we all sat at this table together, I watched everyone sit in the back corner yesterday morning together, which gave me a little chuckle. And I think that people in this community, in the veteran and the first responder community, tend to congregate together and tend to not feel safe when they're not in this community. What are you guys specifically doing to help, make that connection to the outside world?
So it's really hard, and again, this kind of links back to some of our challenges to do with the way that our program operates. So because we're a publicly funded surf therapy program, essentially, the members of the public and the taxpayers of our community have to see that our program is working for them and delivers results. And we would have to justify why we are going to deliver to other groups instead of our own colleagues who need support and assistance. And the public are willing to accept that it's worth us doing it for our own because, well, if they're off work, they're not here to serve me in the community. And if you can get them back into work, that's fantastic, because then there's more cops or firefighters or paramedics on the street who can do the job they want to do and the job I want them to do for me. So that's easy. What's harder to justify is why we need to deliver surf therapy to other groups and why we need to engage with those groups. And we desperately want to. We want to link in, and there are surf therapy programs, as everyone probably knows, around the world, linking in with at-risk youth, with domestic violence victims, with various different groups. And we would love to expand out and deliver to that. But we also have to be conscious of our kind of target demographic and where our responsibility lies because, unfortunately, the groups that we serve don't get a lot of help from anyone else, and it's that really awkward balance of wanting to do more and wanting to help as many people as we can, but needing to help the ones that we've already got, and we've got waiting lists and and it's just there are so many. It's hard.
One last question before we wrap up.
Hello, I'm with these two lovely ladies with Ways for Women. Just want to ask you about that. You went into, you kind of half answered the question, but you said it's just peer-to-peer, so it's police officers with other police officers. I'm wondering, is there training though within that, or how did you guys develop that day? And you said it was very tailored, so just kind of interested in that.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, there is a heap of training. So I think the biggest thing that gives us our relatability is the fact that we do the same role of a member of that community. That breaks down huge barriers right away. So, and because we've expanded out and we now deliver to fire service and paramedics as well as police, well, that obviously went through a process. We weren't sure if that relatability would bridge between the emergency services or whether there would be barriers to a paramedic talking to someone with a law enforcement background. But through trialing it in various ways, we found that actually they do relate, and we go to the same instance and the same job, so that worked. But we were very conscious that if we're going to have these conversations, we've got to have a wealth of training behind us to allow us to do that. So we've had specific mental health training, we've had suicide intervention training, we've had all sorts of things, basically stopping short of being clinicians or counsellors. But yeah, a whole range of different training that we've put in place for our team to enable them to have any of those conversations that could come up. And yeah, I'm more than happy to share all of the training syllabus and stuff that we've put in place if you want it afterwards, and we'll show you exactly what we've put in place for them.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
So we have one more panel before lunch. You guys have been an amazing audience. It's not hard with such engaging panels. What we're going to do for lunch after this next panel is just come up, and I think food's going to be over here, and you can bring it back to your table. For those of you who weren't with us earlier in the week, theme is meet a bunch of people, start a bunch of conversations. We are going to provide the platforms for the other 51 weeks a year for you guys to reconnect with people, to get engaged in groups. So just let this be very much the beginning. We tend to get, obviously, a bit of a drop in excitement and participation, but we're going to work hard behind the scenes to maintain that momentum. So I will be handing off to Isabel, who's moderating the next panel, and we're just going to get set up in front in a few seconds. So if you need a couple minutes to stand up and shake it out, please do. We still do have coffees and Cokes and everything back here, but don't leave.